everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are finally talking about Conqueror. This is the T4 or Tier 4 evolution of the duelist path, and honestly, this is where the class starts feeling completely different. Before Conqueror, a lot of warrior builds were mostly focused around physical damage, physical mastery, etc. But once we now hit Conqueror, the builds start shifting much more into elemental damage, fire and dark synergy, def ignore, and high speed damage rotations. Conqueror also changes what stats you care about, what skills you use, and how you should think about your damage. The goal of this video is for you to understand the build or the builds, because I'm going to show you multiple, so you know what to change depending on your own gear. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. Section number 1. What makes Conqueror different? The biggest change with Conqueror is that you are no longer just playing a pure physical melee build. You're moving into an elemental damage setup. That matters a lot because your stat priority changes completely. Physical mastery is not the main scaling stat anymore. Instead, you start caring more about attack, elemental mastery, both on first place, crit rate and crit damage, especially since in PvE, all the mobs and the bosses have 18% crit resistance. So we need to get at least 18% more to be crit effective. Accuracy as well, because now with all the shield guardians out there, we need to get more accuracy. Shield block guardians, my bad. And lastly, of course, speed, because speed makes it possible to do more actions per turn and to lap someone. We don't care that much about def anymore, and we go more into HP. Before, def and HP was on the same pedestal. Now we shift more into HP because def shred is a real thing right now. And if you have a lot of def, it doesn't matter because the percentage already put you down. If you fight another Conqueror, he's gonna shred a lot of def from you as well. So Nyx and the piercing, let me just see. The skills are also new to me, so I have to check them as well. Piercing Assault, basically shredding almost all your def. The point of every Conqueror should be that you run at least 3 buffs so that you can stack 30% def ignorance. Plus, on top you get the 33% plus the flat. So we're looking here at 63% straight up def ignore, and then Nyx gonna come in clutch with another, 20%, 30%. If someone then uses armor break, then there's another source of def. So a def shred. So basically, def is non-existent in your build, and you should not really spec into it. But HP is still good because we utilize still in PvP or very hard PvE content. Indom gives us health back based on how much health we have lost, and the more health we have, the more health we're gonna get back. Right? Very simple math there, right there. So that's what we're looking for. Conqueror also becomes strong not just because of one single skill, but because multiple parts of the build start working together. As I just mentioned, Piercing Assault very synergizes very well with, for example, Technical Adaptation in PvE, so that if there's a lot of mobs, you take less damage, and the more you clear out in dungeons with your teammates, the more you go into damage. And then when you're at the boss, where there's usually only 2 of them, maybe 3, you will still be able to get your damage bonus from them. So there you go. Tactical adaptation is synergizes very well with piercing assault. Piercing assault also works AoE, so it's even good on mobs. By getting the damage reduction, you still do a lot of damage by ignoring their defenses completely. Valor is still a really good skill, and synergizes still very well with it. Because we don't really go for death, and because there's a lot of death shred now out there, Valor even gets a little bit more potent in my opinion. Simply because the moment you will get low, there is no going around that, and then Valor procs maximum in that instance. Another good option to that is Soulbreaker. Soulbreaker does exactly the same thing, though keep in mind if you would use Soulbreaker here at this point, make sure that you do enough damage. If you know you cannot do the appropriate amount of damage in a short time, so we're talking about 1 to 2 turns to reduce enemy HP to 50% roughly. Well, 55% would be a breakpoint to get at least 4 stacks of Soulbreaker. It's not worth it. So I don't know. Another really good runner-up right now is Blazing Clash, because most of the skills from Conqueror have no cooldown. Blazing Clash gets its max stacks very fast, which used to be on Warrior or Duelist. Blazing Clash got its max stacks after like 7 turns. Now we should reach max stacks after 2-3 turns. So that's also a really good skill. If you know you're tanky enough to not drop, let's say, below 60% HP, that Valor would not make that much sense, then use Blazing Clash. With Blazing Clash, if you know you're not going to drop 40% HP in the first 2 turns, Blazing Clash will be max procced, will be strong, will be almost as strong as Valor, and make it that even Soulbreaker might be even more worth it, because now you have max stacks, your enemy is maybe lower than you, and you're not relying on getting low yourself. So basically, all in all, we have high frequency damage, we have elemental scaling involved into it here. We really like to get the crit, but if we don't get crit, it's still good because we have substitutes in raw damage amplification through Valor, Blazing Clash, and Soulbreaker, and tactical adaptation. We have much better range due to skills that utilize leap effects, such as right now Doomblade is very viable, Dreadful Shadow, and we also have Bladestorm. So there you go. That goes into better range / better mobility. And then obviously the pinnacle of everything is piercing assault, because ignoring death up to 90% of everyone's death is kind of broken. There is supposed to be a cap on death shred, but we have so many different sources of death shred that I'm not sure right now if it's kept per skill type or per skill effect type. If it is due to effect type, then we're kept still at 50%, but there's still no point for us to build death, and we punish people that do build death. Just as a raw and simple explanation, imagine we have 100k death and our enemy has 200, and we have 50% death shred and they have 50% death shred. They reduce our death to 50 and we reduce their death to 100. At that point, the differences in damage reduction are not that big of a deal that we can utilize maybe more damage instead of basing our damage around that we ignore their death and just build flat damage bonuses instead. So there's that, and let's get into section number 2, the core build. For a general PvE build, the main setups I would start with is what you see right here. We're using Doomblade for armor break, which stacks really good with our, well, we don't use Piercing Assault here, yes, exactly, because we use Doomblade. If you would want to use here Darkness Descent, then you would need to change one of these two charms here, Technical Adaptation or Valor, for Piercing Assault. We utilize Flame Aura because now with Elemental Mastery scaling we get so much damage from Flame Aura. I'm going to put a screenshot up here so you can see what I actually mean from a dummy test. Then, and it also is a group skill, so this is perfect. It also buffs your Fantomon, by the way. And then we utilize Dreadful Shadow because it inflicts fear and makes that enemies might not attack us, which is really funny. Because if your Fantomon is out, it's gonna attack your Fantomon, which is fine. The passives are still gonna work. Of course, for the people that use Nyx, you might want to have Nyx out as long as possible. So maybe change this here now with Darkness Descent or Doomblade now, depending on how you did it with the first skill. But for Aegis users, it doesn't matter that much. We're gonna get our heal from Aegis. Aegis probably gonna taunt the enemy anyway, and therefore dies probably pretty quick. In that moment, what we want to have from Aegis is take damage that we normally would take, and that would help us then. And lastly, Soul Piercer. You can use Soul Piercer. It's a good skill. Don't like it that much, but another really good skill now is Flash Fire, Fire Slash. Because Fire Slash does more damage and has no cooldown, and it does the same amount, the same radius, even with Doom damage, which doesn't matter usually that much, but you know, it's still good. This is basically your preferred build for the Tower Fantasia, for open world content, for the Mirage Cauldron, for even dungeons or dragon if you want to go for that. For dungeons itself, I went with this one now, which is basically the same skills if you think about it, but it has different charms. And here I just tried to go for a little bit more spike damage, and that's why the crit damage charm. I couldn't reach good enough crit to justify using crit rate charm inside full eye, but the crit damage charm always gonna, the moment you crit, you do more damage. Of course, it's just preference. You could just use Soul Piercer or a Soul Breaker or Valor or you name it, more damage. You know, it doesn't matter. It's all dependent on your build. If you have more crit than me, maybe the crit damage is even better. Maybe if you have more crit and your crit damage charm is not that high level, maybe just go in with Soulbreaker. Just experiment a little bit, but that's a rough estimation of what I use and what I feel like works and synergizes very well. For Dragon, then I use this. The skills here change a little bit. The armor break is not important. You could go for Darkness Descent or Flame Slash even, because then you basically have skills without cooldown at all. Besides, our Flash Fire here has a little bit of a cooldown, but the initial one is 0. Here use Soul Piercer. Try to test it here with Doomblade. I don't know if it really made a big difference. Do though keep in mind that Piercing Assault, I did say Soul Piercer, my bad. Piercing Assault does not Death Shred. Really, it's more like a Death Ignore on your part, so it doesn't apply to your teammates, which maybe on Dragon you don't want to utilize. Maybe here you would want to use something like Valor if you get glow or something. I don't know. I personally like this setup here for Dragon. It's not that bad. Also, one thing you have to keep in mind about tactical adaptation, it's not as strong as Valor or Soulbreaker, but it has one benefit over those. It doesn't rely on you being low or the enemy being low. You get a lot of front loaded damage right at turn 1. So this is a really good skill for any fights that are like 5 to 10 turns, usually. On Dragon, this is good because Soulbreaker doesn't do anything since the Dragon will always have full HP until the end, right? And Valor is not that great because usually I don't tend to go low that much. So I've found Tactical Adaptation here with Blazing Clash is a really good combo. Here again, I use the crit damage charm for the same reason as in Dungeon, and then I use the Death Shred. Definitely the Death Ignore. The Death Ignore here is really good. It's very useful. Doomblade probably not that much. Maybe change it with Fire Slash. And if I would do it with Fire Slash, I would change the skill loadout like that, and then put Fire Slash at the end. That is this. Then we have Team PvP. Team PvP is like very, very individual. So the most stable skills I would always use for tournaments is Flame Aura and Tactical Adaptation and Indomitable Will. Those three skills are always going to be there. Now, what I did here is I went with Piercing Assault because I like to do a little bit more damage. What else I could use here would be Frames of Battle or Soulfire Protection. Because I utilize Aegis and it's gonna heal me after 3 turns, I can use Soulfire to get a lot of damage reduction and from Tactical Adaptation as well to survive long enough to utilize Flame Aura as much as I can and my Death Shred and get heals from and fear the enemy so they don't attack me. So here this would be a complete tank setup if I would use Soulfire or Frames of Battle. Frames of Battle again has the downside you need to be low. While Soulfire makes you low, though Aegis is gonna heal you straight up again. Frames of Battle usually you get low, Aegis gonna pop in and you still low, and that's not that great. Another team setup layout you could use, which would be more damage focused instead of group utility focused like I am here, which this setup is really good if you play with tank and Sorks. If you could use the arena layout for tournaments, which is more like focused on damage, and there you have like the Doomblade, you have the Blade Storm, which this skill is pretty strong actually. You have Flashfire and you have Flickering Blade. The one thing you could also do is like you can change Doomblade here to Flame Aura because of how the skills are laid out in that order. It does that Flicker. This one here procs first, the Flashfire. Then you're gonna be 2 blocks away from your enemy. Then this one's gonna proc. It's gonna make you standing right in front of them. On the next turn, you're gonna start flame auring while you're standing already next to them, and then your character either jumps back because of this skill here, or he doesn't and he stands right in front of them, and then he jumps back, and he's gonna come close again. So you have 2 flame aura procs in the second turn, and then on the third turn you're gonna use this one here again, which makes you get away from them, and then uses this one to get close to them again. So it gives you another 2 flame aura procs. Because flame aura procs all the time when you move away from the enemy and when you move into the enemy at 1 grid rate distance. So, and the enemy might even do it themselves. If you fight a Sork and you're gonna be at turn number 1 end and you're gonna be close, he's gonna go away. Damage. Oh wait, now you have to go in again. Well, damage. So that's the whole idea. Flame Aura is gonna do probably 30 to 40% of all the damage you do. And it has one benefit as well. It helps versus Fantomons. Materialized Fantomons usually try to get as close as possible because their attacks are just one grid, and they're gonna come close and they're gonna take damage. You move away from them, they're gonna pursue you and they're gonna take damage again. Or you swap them aggro to them, and they're gonna be on you, you're gonna be on them, and then their skill rotation is gonna proc flame or twice on them and probably gonna kill them. The only one thing that I don't know for sure to use here is tactical adaptation. That's a flex spot. And again, as always, use Valor or Soulbreaker depending on what I said in the beginning. Can you do enough damage in the beginning? Use Soulbreaker. If you take more damage than you do, take Valor. Tactical adaptation here is only for the upfront damage bonus without needing to lose or gain health. I like that setup a little bit more over Valor or Soulbreaker, even though my Valor is stronger than my Soulbreaker and Tactical Adaptation. I like to pair my Tactical Adaptation with Blazing, because I have the max damage up front for the first 1-2 turns before Valor would normally kick in or Soulbreaker, and then Blazing is going to be on max stacks. So these two together are going to give me an insane amount of damage. And crit is right now not really that big in my gear. If I would have a lot of crit rate, I would go crit damage instead of tactical adaptation, because crit damage is still king. Then we have another loadout that I was experimenting with. It's not that great. You can try it for yourself and see how it goes. And the same applies to this one. This one here is a build for mostly free to play who don't get lucky with their gear rolls and they don't want to waste the new gear. And since we get so much shards now to get gear due to the affixes and the substat swapping, you should not sell it. A lot of people, what they do right now is they get gear, they're like, oh, that's bad. And then the moment they get another gear piece, which is very common, you make around 3 pieces of gear in 3 days, more or less. They sell it then on the auction house, and some people try to snipe it on a low price because it has bad rolls, right? And then they scrap them because it's much easier and more reliable to buy a gear from auction house than getting the shards from auction house, because no one wants to sell their shards. Everyone is doing their own gear, right? Now slowly on my server they started selling the shards, which is not a good idea either. You should keep all the shards you make. And a matter of fact, try to get more shards, because you can scrap the shards into the defined shards that help you to get the best possible gear for you due to affix trading and substat swapping. So, but I get into this in a little bit. So now this would be free to play, or you are unlucky and you get physical mastery weapons or something, because we can still utilize the same principle plus the new principle that we get right now. This one here hits 3 times. This one here can hit up to 3 times. So, and they're stronger than Lion Combo. And since the crit, blah blah blah, and new gear, I don't assume you have a lot of crit. There's no point of giving you a little bit more crit as well. We just utilize full damage and maximum hit count with unlucky gear, or being free to play, or you just coming into the new season. That would be what you want to use. Or if the skills are very high level and the new skills are not that high level and you don't want to spend now, or you got unlucky with pulls, you name it, there's the build for you. Good. Those are the core builds. Now let's get into a little bit of detail about affixing, the trading post manipulation, and um, certain other things, you know, gems, for example, as well. So first of all, let's talk about gems, right? So we have here our gems, and if you get your equipment to level 130, you get a second gem slot. And a lot of people are wondering what is the best kind of loadout for gems. There's a cheap and there's an expensive loadout type for gems. First of all, I'm going to link you a website in the description that utilizes all the stuff you need to know about gems. That's number one. If you want to know how many gems you need to get to the certain level and how much it's going to cost, what is the breaking probability, etc., this is going to be all in the website. I'm just focusing here on the best gems to use. And as I said, there's two ways of getting two ways, no, not two ways, two kinds of gems that you can use, the cheap ones and the expensive ones. Or in other words, the hard to acquire and the easy to acquire gems. Why cheap and expensive is because you can sell them on Trading Post. But now let's get into the gems. So for your weapon, the best gems would be obsidian. The problem is obsidian is not that frequently dropped, or on the auction house going to be very expensive. So the substitute here would be ruby. And due to the website, you can even compare these gems. And the obsidian and ruby are not much different from the end damage result you're going to get. The difference between these two gems is only obsidian going to take a little bit less level to scale as high as ruby. But the moment they hit both max level, I think was T15, it doesn't matter. They're all going to do the same bonus. But you would prefer obsidian because now you know the more you stack, the lower the bar of level needs to be to reach the same amount of damage than for the rubies. Weird example, if we would have 5 gem slots and I put 5 T5 obsidians in, they're as strong as 5 tier 6 or 4 tier 6 and 4 tier 5, tier 6 and 1 tier 7 ruby. Just as an example. For your offhand, we want to use rubies or obsidian again. There's no hard science around it. Only issue is obsidian is hard to get, so ruby is a little bit more preferred to use here. On your headpiece, speed is very, very important because we do hit a lot of times now, same as last class, but it's a bit more important now due to all the weird affixes you can do. So we want to utilize here speed. Also, another possibility could be speed and crit rate, which is really important, but the same as obsidian, it's very hard to get. So we use speed on the headpiece. On the chest piece, we use HP. You could use a moonstone, which gives you HP and damage reduction. But as I said, it doesn't really matter too much between those two. Death is here now completely wasted. I would still keep the sapphire, but I would still keep the gem just in case something is going to change in tier 5 with Ravager or further. And then on the boots, we do the same. We only use speed. So we have two of our, our main hand, our offhand is going to use rubies for attack. Our headpiece and our boots going to use speed for lapping people, doing more turns, more actions per turn, etc., etc. And our chest piece is going to use HP. That's the easy setup, the cheap setup. The expensive and the more grindy setup to acquire would be main hand and offhand obsidian, headpiece and boots amethyst, and our chest piece would be moonstone. That would be the most ideal setup, I would say. What you could do is if you don't feel like you're going to get that much of the expensive or the hard to acquire ones, then just mix them. Go for Obsidian and Ruby on the dual slot when you have your weapons and gear at level 130. On sword and offhand, well, main and offhand. On the headpiece and on the boots, go for Amethyst and Citrin. And on the chest, go for a barrel and then a moonstone. That's like what I would recommend you guys. So that's about the gems. Now let's get into the refining process. As I mentioned before, we have the possibility now to do FX trading and substat swapping. So it's very important that everyone knows this correctly. And let me start from the start, from the beginning. Let me start from the start. Don't sell your shards or gear that you acquire from the dungeons, because FX trading is not based on the gear rarity or on the gear level, and also not dungeon dependent. So if I drop in a couple of days when the new dungeon is going to come out, not Demon Blood, the new one, if it comes out and I'm going to run it and I get a gear piece, let's assume I'm going to get a sword because I have a mythic sword. By the way, this only works with mythic and up. So now imagine I'm going to get a mythic sword or a divine sword, it doesn't matter, from the new dungeon. And this sword is going to have, in the substats, the lower 4 stats, is going to have crit rate, accuracy, and then instead damage to foes with debuffs increased by 6%. Those are the most ideal stats I could use, right? Well, the accuracy is kind of like, but we can worry about this later. Let's focus first on the stats I got. What I have here right now is crit rate, block rate, HP, and stunned and frozen enemies, which kinda is more like a tank's weapon because tank is gonna freeze someone or stun them, something like this. And block rate is also for tank, HP is for tank, crit rate because tank needs crit. But um, I'm not fancy selling it. Because I could get, if I scrap my weapon, 50 shards and maybe with doing 1 day of dungeons, maybe get a new mythic weapon. Or maybe scrap it and then scrap the shards as well to get divine shards so I could re-roll a trade on another piece of gear. But the new weapon that I got is really good. But I still want to change the accuracy on my new weapon that I got, because remember, I got it with crit rate, accuracy, and then damage to debuff foes plus 5%. I want to use my crit rate that I have on this sword now and put it instead of the accuracy on the first one. I can do that with affix transfer. If I go to Michaela and talk to her, I can put my sword in here and then select the new sword I got in here, and it will show me what I can do. Let me actually unlock this so you guys can see. So I select this and I select this, and now you can see I transferred the substats from this weapon over to this one, and they're gonna go with the item level of the weapon. So for example, I think this weapon here had lower item level. I want to transfer. Oh, and the transfer is also free. So if I get a good weapon, I can transfer my substats on my other weapon that has a better base stat. For example, the weapon that I use right now has elemental mastery, so I really want to keep the elemental mastery. If the other weapon that I have has, let's say, speed on it, I don't care about the speed. So but the speed weapon has all my desired stats. I can just copy the stats over to my new good weapon because it has elemental mastery and keep all the nice substats. And what else we can do is in our refine, in our stash, we can basically change stats. Of course, for example, I don't want to lose the crit rate, so I will have to pay 300 now to reroll 3 of these stats. Please keep in mind, this is a disclaimer. If you press refine and you have the divine shards, there's no turning back. If you cancel out of the window, it's going to consume your divine shards and your stats going to be not changed. So please keep that in mind. Before you press refine, know that if it's bad rolls, it's going to consume the divine shards regardless if you cancel or you press accept. So make up your mind. And look, are there stats that rerolled a little bit better than what I had before? Even if it's just a little bit, then just go with it, you know? If it's just complete dead shit, you know, then just cancel it. But that's basically, you know, the idea. We can use weapons to reroll stats. And now you probably think like, well, but why should I not sell my weapon? Well, because you can scrap it and make divine shards out of it to reroll stats on a weapon that is good. And the same applies to any other kind of gear. Another example. I have this weapon, and let's assume I have only this sword. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna say it has 2 good stats, 2 bad ones. And the main stat, you know, not the base stat. The base stat would be attack. Every sword has attack as a base. The main stat, which is the second one, that's gonna be a dead roll. And I have shards because I didn't sell weapons, and when I dropped weapons from the dungeons, I scrapped them to shards. Now, let's say I have 400 shards. Now, you know what I could do, right? I either could scrap now the shards to get divine shards to reroll the traits, or I could be really smart because it has a dead roll on it. I could make other weapons out of them because from 400 shards you can essentially make 6 weapons. 4 from the shards, and then when they all 4 are trash, you can scrap them and you get 200 shards back again because every weapon gives you 50, and then scrap them. It's not 6, it's 7 because you know at the end you get 2 weapons and you can scrap them as well, and then you get the last one. So you have basically 7 tries to get good substats. And if you get good substats or also a good main stat, you can copy over. So now what you really want to do is, technically, right? If you want to play the long run, which this game is, you want to keep all the gear that you acquire and you want to keep all the shards that you acquire. And the only thing you do is at the end of this week, when the new dungeon is going to come out. Well, for me, it's 6 days. For every other server, it's going to be different. But for me, it's going to be 6 days from now. And I think we had already like 5 days or something of the new season. So what I would suggest is everyone's going to do. They're just going to run the dungeon as best as possible. Keep all the shards and all the gear you acquire. Snipe some gear from the auction house. Get some shards from the trading post. From people that are not aware. As bad as it sounds, I'm not a big fan of doing this or saying this, but it's the most optimal way. And in my opinion, knowledge is free. So I give you even the bad one. Depends on your moral compass, of course. And then, when the new dungeon's going to come out, or one day before that, right? Because you don't run it, right? You buy your 2 dungeon attempts on the day before so that you can run the new dungeon 6 times. And then what you do, instead of running the dungeons on the day before the new one comes out, you min-max your gear as I just told you. You acquired maybe a good weapon, maybe good chest piece. Well, nice. And now what we're gonna do is we craft all the other remaining gear pieces, or we focus on the essential substats. Because how I see it, I will probably focus more on substats and do every dungeon. I've tried to get 2 pieces of with good substats. Because now, listen, if I get a good weapon and a good offhand with all the substats and the main trait that I want, and now I go into the new dungeon and I get the same thing. I get a good weapon just with a good main trait. I can copy my old weapon to the new one I just acquired from the new dungeon, and it's going to be best in slot because I already focused on the substats on my weapon before, on the Demon Blood dungeon. Now for the next one, I just need to get a weapon with a good main stat. I don't care about the substats. And the item level of the new weapon, even if it's divine, imagine it's like item level 200, and my sword here is level 130. That doesn't matter because the substats is gonna adjust to the item level of the new weapon, even to the rarity. So if I have 3 crit rate rolls and a damage to debuff +5, it's gonna blow up and gonna be, instead of 3 to 4, maybe 5% crit rate, it's gonna be 7, 8, 9, 10. And all of a sudden, just by changing one weapon and affixing it to the new one, well, making one weapon and affixing that to the new weapon, all of a sudden, I start to be on crit cap, which the new crit cap is 118%, to be able to make 100% crits. So there you go. And if I'm unlucky with my rolls, maybe I decide, okay, I craft a weapon, I do 2 tries for my 400 shards, they were shit. Well, you know what I can do, right? I can always gamble on the refine. I can just scrap all my shards into divine shards, which they give you twice as many divine shards from the shards. So scrap one item, get 50 weapons or gear shards, scrap 50 gear shards, get 100 divine shards. So you know what I could do, right? Oh, I like one trait here on my weapon, which is crit rate, right? I need 300, so let me scrap 150 gear shards and reroll all 3 of them. Well, if they're bad, they're bad. If they're good, they're good, you know? That's basically it. Even if they're a little bit better. Imagine I would just get attack, attack, and speed. That would be already better than what I have here. Even if it's percentage. There you go. That is basically all you need to know about affix and refine and what the fuck ever, you know. Is there anything else? Yeah, Fantomons. So now, with Fantomons being adult, we see a big spike of when people utilize Nyx when it comes to damage. And that is because the Death Shred, because Nyx does good damage on Berserker due to dark damage, right? And all that stuff. But I don't regret my choice of Aegis, because Aegis is better in group utility, open world, dungeons, etc. etc. And guess what? It helps me a little bit offset my crit rate. Because everyone that doesn't have Aegis right now as a Conqueror will have very low crit rate. And if they run a crit increase charm and a crit damage charm, you already know you're going to do more damage than them, even if you're lower geared. Uh, Other than that, there's also, and that's very important information, the 4 Fantomons that you resonate are a matter which ones you use. In an ideal circumstance, which I'm not a big whale, so the ideal circumstance is kind of out of the question for me, but for everyone else that is a whale, what you want to do is you don't want to use Aegis here. You want actually, if you have the possibility, to use Nyx, um, Xylotos, and this PvP thing, I don't know what it's called, Kells, and then maybe a 4th one. Actually, you want to use 4 damage ones. But in my opinion, the most ideal setup would be 2 supports, 2 damage ones, and the damage one has to be on the main one, and Aegis should be in the 20% boost zone, and then you use it. And the reason for that is that the Fantomons on the top, they contribute to the stats you get. So for example, if I click on Aegis here, you will see here total bonus stats. I get attack, HP, crit res, damage res, block rate, speed, and def. If I go to Xylotos, I get attack, HP, crit rate, def, speed, and damage boost. So this is more tank focused, and this one here is more damage focused. So now imagine I had Nyx here on the same level, and then Xylotos, and then Kells, and then maybe one support one, which gives me damage reduction and damage boost at the same time. So that would be the best layout. The Fantomon passives or the stats of the Fantomon are not influenced if it is not up here. So even like if I had enough materials for the Fantomon to level them up, I would put Xylotos here, Kells here, and then Cotton Ball here, what is it? Zillaeri or something. I would put Zillaeri here, and then I would put the Herbote, I would put it here. And I would have both of them, the support ones, give me kind of the damage reduction that Egg is going to give, but they give me damage boost of one of a damage pet, and then I have two damage pets, which, give me X amount of damage boost. So I would be much stronger, almost the same tankiness, kind of. Way more speed, way more attack, etc. So that would be the best loadout, what I would do. So it would be Nyx, Xylotos, Kells, Cotton Ball, Zilfaeri, or Nyx, Xylo, Zilfaeri, and Herbote. That would be like what I would do. 2 damage, 2 support, and damage always maximum resonation, or 3 and 1. I don't know why no one ever talked about that stuff, but there you go. Piece of information for free again. Of course, if you don't have Nyx, what you can do is you can do Aegis, 2 damage Fantomons, and then 1 support, like I do. Yeah, I think that was more or less that was it. If there's anything that I've missed, if you have any questions, put it in the comment section. Fucking eat my ear off. Join the Discord. Link is also in the description. Leave a like, a follow, share it with your guild members and your mom, and well, don't forget to subscribe. And see you in the next time. In the next one. Peace.